Hi, why don't you start out with introducing yourself, the character you play, and a little about the character in The Wedding Singer.
Take it away.
Okay, my name is Matt Hill. I'm from California, and I'm here in Warsaw doing The Wedding Singer. I'm playing Robbie Hart in The Wedding Singer, or The Wedding Singer in The Wedding Singer. Robbie Hart is a diehard musician. He loves to play, he loves to write, and he loves weddings. Wedding singing is something he's been doing for the past 6 years, and he's really enjoyed it. And up until this point, he's loved everything about love. So he writes songs about love, he writes songs about loving love, and that's just kind of how he does his life.
And I'm Julia Sullivan. My name is Stephanie Cowan. I'm from New Jersey, but I'm also here for the summer. And Julia is like a sweet and sassy girl who is a waitress, and she is married. She's engaged to Glenn Gulia, who's this rich man, and he really doesn't treat her right. So it's interesting when she finally figures out what real love is supposed to be, which I don't want to give any spoils, but if you've seen the movie, then it's pretty similar to the movie in that sense, played by Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore.
Well, that leads to my next question. How similar is the show, the musical, to that movie? Have you guys seen the movie? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I remember seeing the movie when it came out, and I loved it. And I've watched it recently a couple times just as a reference. It's similar in tone and style, of course. You know, the 80s can be played in very few different ways, and have it still be funny and entertaining. And so it's definitely like in the world of the 80s. So it's kind of the extreme 80s, so that everyone can get a good laugh out of it. There are a couple things that are different, but for the most part, it's the same storyline. Girl thinks she's in love with boy, boy thinks he's in love with girl, things go poorly, and the boy meets the other girl, and then things just work out. So it's a lot of fun to like hit that movie, but also make it our own.
Yeah, it's one of the songs that's in the movie is in the show, which is always a crowd pleaser because people love hearing songs that are also in the movie. So that's, yeah, it's. I think it's similar. There's a lot of lines that are the same, and a lot of the temperament of the characters are similar. So it's very similar.
Yeah, the good laughs from the movie are still in the musical, and more so. So it's very three-dimensional. You know, it has to be on stage and whatnot.
Yeah. So being kind of 80s themed, there's a lot of 80s references in the movie, and I mean,
yes.
Will there be things in it that people will say, "Oh, I remember that from the 80s"?
Definitely. There's a lot of. We actually did a designer run yesterday, and there were some people who were clearly present during the 80s because they were laughing at things that we might not have understood as much.
Yeah, it's been strange. I've done a lot of like research on the show, finding what these references mean. There's a lot of references to musicians and songs that, of course, I'm familiar with, but I didn't live during that period. I genuinely was not born at the time. And so trying to understand that world so that I can portray the jokes correctly has been a fun little adventure. And I think it's paying off well. Like Stephanie said, the people who lived in the 80s are really enjoying it so far.
Yeah. I mean, there are always shows about different time periods, but being a time period that's relatively close, does that make it more difficult, easier to get in touch with a show, or?
It's interesting because we actually just finished Hello Dolly, which is takes place in 1890. So we're going 100 years and then some forward. So it's interesting because I think for a period piece it's more difficult because we don't understand how in the 1800s how they would dress or how they would hold themselves and the proper etiquette. I think that being able to watch a movie like The Wedding Singer that is really a like telling of the time it makes it easier for us because we're more similar to the actual characters that we're playing.
Yeah, for that reason it is easier, and at the same time, strangely, it's more difficult because it's so recent that it's so fresh in a lot of people's minds that you have to portray it exactly the way it is. Hello Dolly, there's a little leeway because no one lived during the 1890s, and we can kind of futz with it and make it up and play with it the way actors can. But there's a very sort of strict behavior that went on in the 80s, and a style of talking and a style of walking that we have to sort of recreate to the best of our abilities. And we've, been successful, I think, so far.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you kind of mentioned the songs and the music. I was going through a list of some of the songs that by title, I didn't recognize. Are there any songs actually from the 80s in this, or was this all new music written for the Broadway show? Or
the song that I was referencing is when Adam Sandler is in his bedroom and he's writing the song on his guitar. That actually is in the show.
Okay.
So that, like, people, when they see the movie, they're going to be like, it's familiar to them.
Yeah.
But the rest of the show is written for the musical, which I love. I think that's great.
Almost every song has a beat that is very reminiscent of a specific song from the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
They're not so much parodies, but very much drawn from 80s material. And there are quite a few songs that you'll swear, oh, I've heard this before, but in fact it was actually written originally for the musical. There are a couple tunes that like find their way in from original 80s songs, but nothing major, no.
Okay. Well, this is also the third show this summer based on a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, there was Shrek, and then 9 to 5, and then Wedding Singer. Do you guys enjoy doing shows based on movies, or what kind of, or does that present new challenges because people have seen the movies, or?
I mean, I think it's awesome. Shrek was great to start off with because we grew up on Shrek, or I definitely grew up on Shrek. I remember seeing all of those movies in theaters and just loving those. And so the chance to do that for an audience and just live in that world was fantastic. And the kids all seeing it afterwards was so rewarding. Mm-hmm. And 9 to 5 was similar, even though I hadn't really, grown up on it in the same way. Knowing the movie and getting to create that world on stage is always a pleasure. And Wedding Singer has just been more so because it's, again, a movie that we knew as children, and that is just so ridiculous. It's just a little outlandish, but still realistic. And everything about it is just fun to play in. So yeah, it's been really, really great to know it and then create it.
Yeah, I think it's a great tactic to write a musical based on a movie because it already comes with a stigma, and it already comes with a feeling towards it. And so being in Warsaw, I think it's a great idea to do musicals that are also movies because people have already seen it. We don't have to sell them on a show that they don't know.
Yeah.
They can say, I'm excited to come see The Wedding Singer because they've seen the movie. And I think that that's a great tactic, especially for theaters outside of New York, because New York people will come no matter what. But being in Warsaw, we need a little help. It's great for them to have the emotional attachment to 9 to 5 or to Hello Dolly, to that movie. So I think it's a great thing.
Okay. Well, you mentioned you were from California and you're from New Jersey. Now, how did you get to Warsaw?
Well, we both study musical theater at different schools around the country. So I grew up in California. I go to school in Cincinnati, and for the past, as long as Wagon Wheel's been around, school kids from my school have worked here. So it's they auditioned on our campus, and I auditioned and just was lucky enough to get cast here. And I was very, very happy to say I'm going to be spending my summer in Warsaw. The Wagon Wheel is a very, very special theater, and the things that we do here are ridiculously spectacular for how little time we have, and it really, really has been a blast. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm from Penn. I go to school at Penn State, and we had someone who worked here last year who was like, "You must come audition. You have to come." So we all caravan. There were like 12 or 13 of us, and we all caravaned to Chicago on our spring break. And we all auditioned, and several of us got offers, and it's so great to be here. I'm with 4 other Penn State students this summer, which is incredible, just to be able to be with familiar and also meet new people. And then, so we auditioned, and then once we got the offers, we were like, okay, we're going to Indiana. It's been great, and seeing the interns and then the youth programs that they have here, it's so interesting because I don't think the children realize how wonderful this theater is. Like, this 830-seat house in Warsaw, Indiana is really such a gift and a beautiful thing.
The production value and the talent, I mean, it's one of those few jobs in the country that when you get a job at Wagon Wheel, you must have something ridiculous if you're willing to turn it down. Like, I'm talking Broadway. Just because to be able to spend the entire summer here and create all of these different parts and to live in every different part of a show, whether you're ensemble, the lead, supporting, featured, you really know what it means to become an artist here at the Wagon Wheel. in the summer, I believe. So
Yeah.
it's been really, really educational and fun and inspiring. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you both are the leads, but why don't you talk a little bit about the other characters in the show and the other actors you're working with?
Yeah. So the cast it's a really big cast. There are quite a few like lead and supporting characters. I have my band mates, so it's me, Robbie Hart, and then Sammy and Georgie. Most people know from the movie, Sammy's kind of like the bro, like the classic 80s, like, what up?
With the mullet.
Yeah,
I know.
he's very, I mean, maybe not the brightest bulb, but he, like, is totally a sweetheart. And then George is the sort of ambiguous character that we all get a good laugh from. And the actor who's portraying that character is doing a fantastic job of really, really getting that comedy and that style that is just kind of that strange 80s person who is not quite sure where he belongs.
Yeah.
And then you have a couple friends.
Yes, my cousin is Holly, and she's a little on the slutty side, but she embraces it and she lives it. She's actually, they have a love interest between her and Sammy, and so that's interesting to see how that plays out because they're destined for each other. So it's interesting to see how they figure that out. And then I have my mother who shows up every once in a while, and I love working in this show because it takes place in New Jersey, and so I'm from New Jersey, and I get to kind of embrace the New Jersey that's within me. So we have a full New Jersey mom. Who else? Who are my friends?
Well, the show, different from the movie, takes an interesting turn towards the end. If most people remember, the movie sort of ends on an airplane with, Billy Idol and that whole sort of funny gag. The show, can't really create an airplane on stage, so it ends up going to a different location where there are quite a few
surprise guests.
Surprise guests, I guess is the best way to put it. We had Dolly Parton here at 9 to 5, and we'll have some fascinating people joining us towards the end of Wedding Singer that are surely going to get some good laughs.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you mentioned being from New Jersey and taking place in New Jersey. What's New Jersey like when you say embrace that? I mean,
right.
Because a lot of people might know like Jersey Shore, but
that's what. And it's interesting because the Jersey Shore came out right when I went to college. So telling people that I was from New Jersey when I got to college wasn't the best thing. I would kind of hide it because I would tell them I was from New Jersey, and I would get the response of like, "Oh, New Jersey," and so it's kind of. It's interesting because people always have that opinion about New Jersey, but everybody loves it. It's a great place. I'm from the central part of New Jersey, and so I'm not near the shore, and I don't really have an accent. I'm kind of neutral, but it's fun to let the accent come out a little, like coffee and what else? Water. Let's say water. And it's just great. It's great because it's New Jersey. It's interesting. I actually live here in Indiana, I live with the other girl who's from New Jersey here, Alex, and she's playing Linda in the show. And
my ex-girlfriend.
Yes, his ex-girlfriend.
Soon to be ex-girlfriend. My fiance.
And so we're both very, very New Jersey, and it becomes apparent that we're from New Jersey because we're very loud. So in the house, our roommates are like, "You are so loud." So it's nice to be on stage and not get judged for being loud. Yeah, but it's great, and it's interesting because they mention towns like Paramus, and they go to New York, and it's all very similar to me. So it's like my home away from home.
Let's talk a little, I guess, about costumes. I'm assuming and hairstyles, very 80s. And
yeah.
You mentioned a mullet, so
yeah, the costumes are awesome. Again, going back to production value at Wagon Wheel, they do some awesome, crazy things. So when we found out we were doing a show in the 80s, I was really excited. Bright colors, like crazy, weird fashions that have just like become a thing of the past are being reborn underneath our stage right now in the costume shop. And some hairstyles that you will just be speechless for. I mean, there's a number in the show called Casualty of Love, which a lot of people remember the scene in the movie where the character, Robbie Hart, has been sort of left at the altar by his fiancée, and he's really, really downtrodden and really upset about it, and he goes to a wedding to do his job, and it sort of just goes very badly. He ends up like calling out a lot of people at this wedding to be very ugly and unfortunate, and how they're never going to find love because he'll never find love. And so that number has quite a few things going on in it. Some hairstyles and some costumes that